In today's world, some nations still struggle with the idea of free speech. In the past 15 years, South Africa has created legislation that grants individuals the rights to freedom of speech. The struggle for this right is a result of racial segregation stemming from the country's history of apartheid. Since the beginning of European settlement in South Africa, racial segregation has been at the forefront of much controversy in the country. In 1948, the ruling government party put into place the system of apartheid, which made it legally permissible to segregate whites and people of color. This system of racial segregation was enforced through legislation by the ruling National Party, which was made up of Afrikaners. Afrikaners are the white descendants of the European settlers that first came to South Africa during colonial times. Under the oppressive system of apartheid, all people of color were disenfranchised, restricting their rights to vote, own businesses, travel freely, and own land. Apartheid also forced them to live in slums where they could not farm for themselves, which made them dependent on the Afrikaner people to provide work and food for the families of the non-white races. By the 1950s, many revolutionary groups had gained power and precedence with the African people. The African National Congress was one of these groups that urged for a non-racial democracy and fought for black rights. In 1994, the South African government officially abolished the apartheid system when the country held its first non-racial elections. At this time, the African National Congress became the governing political party of the Republic of South Africa, and the South African Parliament went to work on drafting a new constitution that defined South Africa as one sovereign democratic state based on the principles of human rights, constitutional supremacy, and the rule of law and universal adult suffrage. The Bill of Rights for the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa states the following about free speech. Everyone has the right to freedom of expression, which includes freedom of the press and other media, freedom to receive or impart information or ideas, freedom of artistic creativity, and academic freedom, and the freedom of scientific research. However, this right does not extend to propaganda for war, incitement of imminent violence, or advocacy of hatred that is based on race, ethnicity, gender, or religion, and that constitutes incitement to cause harm. This limitation clause has been the center of much controversy when it comes to freedom of speech because it restricts expressions that can be classified as hate speech. Many South African revolutionists are inclined to sing anti-apartheid songs as a form of protest and to celebrate their native heritage. However, many of these songs are viewed as extreme and are often categorized as hate speech because of their references towards violence against white people.
So we have a case in South Africa where a lot of these songs were very attacking in the way that they portrayed white people at the time, which I suppose you could argue is justified. I'd probably say it's justified. But what we have now is a case where the Constitution has limited freedom of speech, where the speech can be construed as racist, harmful in a whole number of ways, in terms of culture, gender, all those sorts of things.
Julius Malema, the former leader of the African National Congress Youth Wing, has been at the center of this struggle for free speech. He is world-renowned for singing the controversial song called Shoot the Boer, which some argue is a call for violence against whites.
So the singing of this song, I think, is it's a contentious issue because of what is happening in South Africa at this point in time. You have a lot of farm murders that have increased quite a lot since 1994. So on one hand, you have the case where murders of white farmers has been increasing, which, a lot of people debate about the nature of that, but I would argue that that is just essentially a crime issue that comes out of poverty. So you have this murder, and then on the other hand, you have people that are singing this song, Dubilibunu, but as a metaphor. It's sort of out of remembrance. So when Julius Malema was accosted basically, and they asked him, why are you singing this song? Surely this is unconstitutional, it's tantamount to hate speech. His response to that was, no, this is a part of a larger struggle tradition. It's about memory, it's about commemoration, and the word boer, at this point in time, he intends to use it as a sort of a broader term for oppressor. So that does not necessarily denote to white people, to farmers, or whatever. What he is pointing to is economic divisions in the country. So in 2012, if you were to hear the song Dubulibunu, the idea that Julius is trying to get across is that there are still economic oppressors in this country, and they incidentally remain within the hands of white people who essentially still control South Africa's economy to a large degree.
Malema is often chastised for singing this distasteful song in public because of his radical reputation among South Africans.
We are talking about the perception that people have outside this courtroom of you, of what you say, and how that should be interpreted. Not how you say you interpret it and what you mean, how it should be interpreted outside.
One interesting with Dubulibunu though, is that that song was actually created in 1993, which is after apartheid ended, so a lot of people have said maybe the song actually isn't appropriate altogether because it's not really a struggle song. It happened after the release of Mandela in 1990, so that's another one of the issues surrounding that song.
Whether or not Malema means for this song to incite violence, he remains in the spotlight for publicly saying controversial things and using rhetoric that can be construed as hate speech. Recently, he has been at the forefront of a divisive issue over land redistribution in South Africa. Here's a statement he made to a rally outside of his court case.
We are going to take the land, whether they like it or not. The land must be shared amongst all South Africans. Viva ANC, viva!
The struggle with free speech is just a microcosm for the various social issues that are still present in South Africa's young democracy. With the development of their new constitution and the leadership of strong-willed revolutionists, the country will continue to progress towards overcoming its history of oppression.